The sky was the color of charcoal, heavy and full of unspoken threats. Wind howled through the palm trees, twisting their fronds into grotesque shapes. It was as if nature itself was bracing for something terrible, something unseen. Rain lashed down, a cold, stinging torrent that blurred the world into an impressionist painting of grays and greens. The air crackled with an uneasy energy. I felt it as I hurried across the courtyard, my bag clutched tightly to my chest. The normally bustling campus was deserted, everyone seeking shelter from the sudden downpour. I was just steps away from the library doors when I heard it. A scream, sharp, piercing, full of terror. It sliced through the roar of the wind and the pounding rain, stopping me dead in my tracks. My heart pounded against my ribs like a frantic bird in a cage. The name Aisha was carried on the wind, a desperate plea lost in the storm. I spun around, searching for the source of the cry. Through the sheets of rain, I saw a group of students huddled under the awning of the cafeteria, their faces pale with alarm. They were staring at something, their expressions a mixture of horror and disbelief. I pushed my way through the crowd, my blood turning to ice as I reached the front. There, in the middle of the covered walkway, a girl was writhing on the ground. Her body twisted and contorted in ways that seemed humanly impossible. Her screams were ragged gasps now, each one a nail hammered into the coffin of the peaceful afternoon. Her eyes were wide with terror, unseeing. Students gathered around, their faces etched with worry and fear. Some tried to restrain her, to ease her suffering, but she fought them off with a strength that defied her slender frame. Two strong boys, members of the university rugby team, tried to pin her down, but she threw them off as if they were children. Her screams were a language all their own, a terrifying symphony of shrieks and guttural cries. It was as if she was fighting something invisible, something sinister that held her in its grip. Medical students arrived, their faces grim as they assessed the situation. They tried to speak to her to calm her, but their words were met with fresh waves of terror. Malay, English, Mandarin, none of it seemed to reach her. Whatever held her captive spoke a language far older, far darker than any of these. Someone in the crowd began to recite verses from the Quran, their voice a soothing balm against the girl's tormented cries. For a moment, the girl's struggles seemed to lessen. Her eyes, though still unfocused, lost some of their wildness. But the moment was fleeting. A fresh wave of agony washed over her face, twisting it into a mask of pure suffering. Her body arched off the ground, her back bending at an unnatural angle. Her screams returned, louder than ever, echoing through the courtyard like the cries of a tortured animal. The rain continued to fall, a relentless torrent that mirrored the chaos unfolding before us. Section 6. A Night of Terror. That night I lay awake in my room, the girl's scream still ringing in my ears. The sound was so piercing, so filled with agony, that it seemed to echo endlessly in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The darkness in my room felt oppressive, as if it were closing in on me, suffocating me with its weight. The storm had passed, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The rain had washed away the grime of the day, but it also seemed to have washed away any sense of normalcy. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, broken only by the occasional drip of water from the eaves. The moonlight, now unobstructed by clouds, cast long, haunting shadows that danced on the walls. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside my window sent shivers down my spine. It was as if the house itself was alive, breathing and moving in the darkness. I could hear the wind whispering through the trees, carrying with it the faintest hint of a melody, a song of sorrow and loss. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a deafening drum in the silence. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I felt it. A presence, cold and uninviting, seemed to fill the room. My body tensed, every muscle rigid with fear. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and stress. But deep down, I knew it was real. Something was there with me, watching, waiting. A cold hand brushed against my cheek, sending a jolt of terror through me. The touch was icy, almost inhuman, and it left a trail of goosebumps in its wake. I gasped, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was it a ghost, a spirit, or something far more sinister? My eyes flew open, but the room was empty. The shadows seemed to mock me, their shapes shifting and twisting in the moonlight. I strained my ears, listening for any sign of movement, but there was nothing, just the deafening silence and the pounding of my own heart. I felt a chill run down my spine, a sense of dread settling in the pit of my stomach. Moonlight streamed through the window, painting the familiar space in an unsettling silver light. The room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in on me, the air thick with an unspoken menace. I could see every detail, every corner, yet it all felt foreign, as if I was seeing it for the first time. The moonlight cast eerie shadows that danced and flickered, adding to the sense of unease. And then I heard it. A sound so faint, so delicate, that I almost missed it. It was a whisper, barely audible, yet it cut through the silence like a knife. My heart skipped a beat and I held my breath, straining to hear more. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, filling the room with its mournful tone. A soft, mournful whisper, barely audible, yet chilling me to the bone. It was a voice filled with sorrow, with a pain so deep it was almost tangible. The words were indistinct, a jumble of sounds that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead, my hands trembling as I clutched the blankets. It sounded like the girl's voice, weak and filled with despair. The same voice that had screamed in the night, now reduced to a haunting whisper. I could feel her presence, her pain, as if it were my own. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with an unspoken sorrow. I wanted to call out, to ask who she was, what she wanted, but my voice was caught in my throat, and it seemed to be coming from right next to my ear. The whisper was so close, so intimate, that I could feel the breath on my skin. It was as if she were right there beside me, her presence almost tangible. I turned my head slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, but there was nothing. Just the empty room and the lingering echo of her voice. The night stretched on, each minute an eternity, as I lay there, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. Section 7. The Haunting Presence. The next evening, the fear was a living, breathing thing inside me. It was as if the very air around me had thickened, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the leaves outside seemed amplified, echoing in my mind like a sinister symphony. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something unseen lurked just beyond the edge of my vision. It was a sensation that gnawed at my sanity, making me question every shadow, every flicker of light. The darkness seemed to have eyes, and they were all fixed on me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the girl's contorted face, heard her blood-curdling screams. Her image was burned into my mind, a haunting reminder of the terror that had taken root in my soul. Her screams echoed in my ears, a chilling soundtrack to my growing dread. As I sat at my desk, trying in vain to study, I felt a cold breeze swirl around me. My blood ran cold. I wasn't alone. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing in as if they were alive, breathing. The candlelight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls, mocking my fear. Soft footsteps seemed to echo through the room, slow and deliberate. Each step was a reminder of the presence that haunted me, a ghostly rhythm that matched the pounding of my heart. The sound was faint, yet unmistakable, growing louder with each passing second. Then, 3 distinct knocks on my door. They were slow, deliberate, and filled with a sense of foreboding. Each knock seemed to reverberate through my very being, shaking me to my core. It was as if the darkness itself had come to call, demanding to be let in. My heart hammered in my chest. The sound was deafening in the silence, a frantic drumbeat that echoed my terror. I could feel the blood rushing through my veins, each pulse a reminder of my vulnerability, my helplessness in the face of the unknown. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or speak. My body refused to obey my commands, locked in a state of sheer terror. The shadows seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with their oppressive presence. I was trapped, a prisoner of my own fear, with no escape in sight. Section 8. Flight and Farewell. That was it. I couldn't stay there another night. I packed my bags, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip them closed. As I hurried out of my room, I thought I heard that mournful whisper again, following me like a shadow. My family was shocked by my sudden return. They bombarded me with questions, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. How could I explain the unexplainable? The doctor said it was stress, exhaustion. But I knew better. Something had followed me home from that campus, something dark and terrifying. Section 9. Whispers in the hospital halls. Weeks later, I learned that the girl had vanished from the hospital, disappeared without a trace. The news spread like wildfire, sending chills down the spines of everyone who had heard about her. The hospital staff were baffled, and the police had no leads. It was as if she had simply evaporated into thin air, leaving behind only a room filled with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of dread. Some whispered that her mother, a woman shrouded in black, had come for her in the dead of night. They said she moved like a shadow, silent and swift, her presence barely more than a whisper in the wind. The night she disappeared, the hospital's security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned, capturing only static and darkness. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been tampered with. Others said the girl had never been ill at all, that she had been possessed by something evil, something ancient. They spoke of strange occurrences in her room, objects moving on their own, inexplicable cold spots, and the feeling of being watched. Some even claimed to have heard her speaking in tongues, her voice not her own but that of something far more sinister. The truth remained elusive, lost in a fog of fear and unanswered questions. The hospital tried to move on, but the whispers never truly faded. They lingered in the halls, a constant reminder of the girl who vanished and the mysteries that surrounded her. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights seemed to echo with the unanswered questions that haunted us all. The experience left an indelible mark on my soul, a chilling reminder that there are some things in this world that defy explanation. It was a story that would stay with me forever, a dark chapter in the book of my life. I often found myself wondering about the girl, about where she might be, and whether she had found peace or was still trapped in whatever dark reality had claimed her, that lurk in the shadows just beyond our understanding. These are the things that keep us awake at night, the stories that we tell in hushed tones, afraid that speaking too loudly might summon them. They are the mysteries that remind us of our own fragility, of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. The unseen, I realized, was often the most terrifying. It was the fear of the unknown, the dread of what might be lurking just out of sight that truly haunted us. And in the quiet moments, when the world was still and the shadows seemed to grow longer, I could almost hear the whispers in the hospital halls, reminding me that some mysteries are never meant to be solved.